as you know, this has been a long-term issue, and several years ago, my former state representative Val Hoyle effectively pushed through PERS reform in the legislature that was thrown out by the Oregon court system, which basically said, you made a deal with these workers, and a deal is a deal, and you can't go back and renege on that deal. I think that we're all trying to grapple with it. We have school districts, as you pointed out, Medford, Eugene, where somewhere between 30 and 40% of general fund money is going to pay PERS liabilities. There is no easy answer to this. There is, and we do have to work on it because it will choke us to death if we don't. But I haven't seen anything or heard anybody that has come up with a big solution to our PERS obligation issues. There are some proposals that are biting around the edge. I'll turn that over to our legislative staff to talk a little bit about that. But again, you're not going to come out and kill this werewolf. We might slow it down, but we're not going to kill it. At least not now. Does staff have?
I think to the overall question, I would say that each person who's standing up here today has already started that process of building relationships that are necessary with the legislature, and then they use us to develop the relationships with the other stakeholders. I'm speaking for my colleagues without any permission, but I know that each one of us work with all of the other stakeholder groups on these important policy issues, and we're a voice in that conversation. But what we see from our mayors, city councilors, city managers, city staff, as they talk to their local legislature, representatives and senators, there's a shared constituency and there's a shared understanding that the impacts from the state are felt at the local level, and they're sharing those stories and gaining the support that's necessary to make these really difficult, groundbreaking shifts in some of these revenue and PERS policy issues. They invest in the league to provide those services, but they invest in their relationships with their local officials, as the local officials invest in their relationships with their local representation by coming here to Salem, but having these conversations when they're back in their districts, showing how the impacts are felt when their PERS costs cause you to cut positions, close libraries, how and simple fixes to the revenue system that are very difficult to achieve because of the constitutional issues can have an impact on keeping a library open, to maybe funding a water project that's vital to citizens. And then the final conversation that they have, and I know that they all have them regularly because they walk into a grocery store, and I can't imagine a single one doesn't hear something from a constituent, tell that story to the constituents and get their citizens involved in the process as well. And each one of these people is quite capable and is doing that. I know that, I've seen it, I've heard the conversations, I've watched the city council chambers from time to time, and that's how these folks can influence the process and are working on it, but in addition to the services that we provide as the League of Oregon Cities.
There are bills moving right now through the legislature to change some of the pension benefits in terms of current and future employees, define contribution packages and other forms of support for pensions that are not the PERS model, what they used to call when I grew up was the Cadillac model. But what we have to do in terms of reform is going to be extremely difficult to do. It's like unringing a bell. The courts have spoken, and I think that if we do something else that is not in line with previous judicial decisions, that will be rejected as well. But we have to keep working on it, and we have to keep, working with our legislators to try to reform a system that has basically turned upside down on us.